Some people walk through their own birthday the way others walk through a quiet Tuesday. No fanfare, no celebration, no cake, no candles, no expectation of gifts or gatherings or grand gestures. They move through the day gently, almost cautiously, like someone trying not to disturb the air around them. To the outside world, it looks strange, cold, detached, maybe even sad. But to them, it's simply normal. And that normalcy is the unsettling part, because beneath it often lies a lifetime of emotions stacked like hidden sediment. Layers of unspoken stories, unmet needs, tiny disappointments, forgotten moments, and quiet self-protections. Birthdays for them aren't celebrations. They are reminders. Reminders of years they didn't feel seen. Reminders of expectations that were never met. Reminders of times they felt small, forgotten, or unimportant. Reminders of who didn't show up. Some people treat their birthday like a normal day, not because it means nothing, but because, once upon a time, it meant too much. Let me show you one human moment to ground this truth. There was a man named Rowan. To anyone who knew him, he was calm, collected, steady, like a lighthouse that offered light but rarely asked for any in return. He worked quietly, loved quietly, existed quietly. And every year, when his birthday approached, he did something that confused people. He acted as though nothing was happening. On the morning of his 34th birthday, Rowan woke up, showered, dressed in the same grey sweater he always wore when it was a bit cold out, and made himself a cup of tea. Chamomile. He preferred coffee, but chamomile felt softer, safer, less harsh on days that carried weight. His phone buzzed with a few casual messages from acquaintances. HBD, bro. Have a good one. Many happy returns. He responded with polite thumbs-up emojis, as though acknowledging a weather update. He didn't tell anyone at work. He didn't take the day off. He didn't plan dinner. He didn't buy himself anything special. He slipped through the day like a ghost in his own life. Around lunchtime, his coworker Maya asked if he wanted to grab something to eat. Not for his birthday, she didn't know, but simply because she was hungry and liked his quiet company. At the cafe nearby, she noticed he chose the same meal he always did. A turkey sandwich. No dessert, no indulgence. No, it's my birthday, I'll treat myself. She watched him for a moment, noticing how he always sat in a way that made himself smaller, almost folding inward. The world around him was loud and bright, but he seemed to dim his own presence deliberately. As they walked back to the office, Maya casually said, "By the way, isn't your birthday sometime in November?" Rowan hesitated, a barely there pause, but enough for her to feel it. "Yeah," he said softly, "it's today." She stopped walking. "Rowan, why didn't you say anything?" He shrugged, offering a faint smile. "It's not a big deal." But something in the way he said it didn't sound like humility. It sounded like history. A long one. He changed the subject before she could ask anything else, but the moment stayed with her. Rowan had spent his entire birthday exactly the way he had learned to, quietly, unobtrusively, asking for nothing. Especially not tension. Something shifted that day. It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no breakdowns, no sudden revelations. It wasn't even a conscious realization. It was something softer, sadder, more like a quiet, internal acknowledgement he could no longer ignore. The shift began when he walked home after work. The sky was violet and thinning, the air crisp enough to feel like a new season was trying to arrive. As he walked past the bakery down the street, he noticed a display of small chocolate cakes with curled ribbons of frosting. A mother and her little daughter stood in front of the window, the girl pressing both hands to the glass as she whispered excitedly, "That one. That's the one I want." The mother laughed, ruffled her daughter's hair, and said, "Okay, birthday girl." Something tightened inside Rowan. A string pulled taut. He looked at the girl's face, open, expecting, full of delight simply because the world was acknowledging her existence. He couldn't remember the last time he felt celebrated simply for being alive. He couldn't remember the last time someone asked what kind of cake he wanted, or asked how he wanted to spend the day, or showed up. His childhood birthdays were quiet things. Not tragic, just hollow. His parents weren't cruel. They were distant, distracted, overworked, and emotionally thin. Birthdays were often forgotten, or hurriedly acknowledged with a generic, "Oh, right, happy birthday," said on the way out the door. There were no parties, no candles, no wishes whispered into flickering light. Just a vague sense that the day was supposed to feel special, but somehow didn't. He learned early on not to expect much. And then, as he grew older, he learned something worse. Expectations lead to disappointment. And disappointment hurts. So he let go of expectations altogether. He made himself small. He trained himself not to want. He treated his birthday like just another day, because imagining it could be anything more felt childish. But watching that little girl choose her cake awakened a dormant ache, a tiny pulse of longing he had buried under decades of emotional practicality. Why doesn't anyone ever want to celebrate me? Why doesn't anyone try? Why don't I let them? He walked away from the bakery with a strange heaviness, the kind that comes from recognizing a wound he didn't know was still open. That night, sitting on his couch, still wearing his grey sweater, Rowan whispered a question to the quiet room. When did I stop thinking I was worth celebrating? And that was the shift. Not a transformation, just a recognition. The beginning of an internal unraveling. But here's where Rowan's story becomes larger than him, because Rowan is not an exception. He is a mirror. And this pattern is more common than you think. There are countless people in the world who treat their birthday like a normal day. People who don't tell anyone. People who don't expect calls. People who don't plan dinners. People who pretend they don't care. People who work through the day as if nothing is happening. People who say birthdays aren't important, but secretly hope someone might remember anyway. You have seen them. You might even be one of them. And the reasons behind this behavior are almost never trivial. Some people grew up in households where birthdays were forgotten or minimized. Some people learned early that celebration equals attention, and attention felt unsafe. Some people associate birthdays with loneliness or abandonment. Some people fear that if they throw a celebration, no one will show up. Some people feel unworthy of recognition. Some people believe their existence isn't something others want to acknowledge. Some people find the spotlight excruciating because it exposes their deepest insecurity. What if no one actually cares? So they protect themselves the only way they know how, by turning the day into nothing. Better nothing than disappointment. Better nothing than rejection. Better nothing than hoping for more. There are also people who grew up as emotional caregivers, people who learn to prioritize everyone else's needs, celebrations, achievements, and milestones. They became the ones who planned parties, bought thoughtful gifts, baked cakes, decorated rooms, and generated excitement for everyone else. But when their own birthday arrived, they felt strangely empty. They didn't know how to receive the same care they gave so effortlessly. It felt foreign, awkward, undeserved. Some even felt guilty asking for attention. There are others, often those who have carried emotional burdens for too long, who simply feel disconnected from themselves. Birthdays feel like reminders that time is moving, that they are aging, that they are surviving more than living. For them, celebrating feels forced, like trying to feign enthusiasm for a life they haven't been able to enjoy. Some avoid birthdays because it highlights what hasn't changed, the dreams unfulfilled, the relationships that dissolved, the progress that stalled, the person they hope to be by now. And some avoid birthdays because it highlights what has changed, the loved ones who are gone, the life chapters that have closed, the innocence that has been lost, the years that feel heavy rather than hopeful. So they slip through the day quietly, hoping no one notices the heaviness underneath. But here is the core psychological truth, the darker, more emotional insight that hurts because it is rarely said aloud. People who treat their birthday like a more than days of days, they do it out of self-protection. The birthday becomes a psychological boundary, one built not of strength, but of vulnerability. To celebrate yourself requires believing you are worth celebrating. To acknowledge your birthday requires acknowledging your existence. To hope for effort from others requires risking disappointment. To desire recognition requires admitting you want to be seen. And wanting to be seen is one of the most terrifying desires a wounded person can have. So they choose the safer option, pretend the day doesn't matter, pretend they don't care, pretend they prefer it this way. Because if no one celebrates them, they can shrug it off. They can say it's not a big deal. They can say they don't like attention anyway. They can say they're low maintenance, chill, not into that stuff. All while burying a quiet ache so deep, they barely admit it to themselves. This is the part that hurts. Many people who don't celebrate their birthday never learned how to feel special without strings attached. They never learned how to receive love without earning it. They never learned how to ask for what they need. They never learned how to believe their presence matters. The unspoken truth is this. Treating your birthday like a normal day is often a symptom of emotional neglect. Sometimes from others, sometimes self-inflicted. Often both. It is the residue of years spent feeling uncelebrated. It is the armor of someone who has been disappointed enough to lower their expectations to zero. It is the compromise of someone who fears that acknowledging their birthday will highlight their loneliness. It is the coping mechanism of someone who has learned to treat themselves the way others once treated them, with minimal effort. And yet, beneath all of this, there remains a small, flickering desire to be remembered, to be valued, to be chosen, to be loved loudly, not quietly, to matter, even when they insist otherwise. That longing does not disappear. It hides, it adapts, it pretends, but it does not vanish. It waits. Silently. And now we arrive at the soft, philosophical ending, the kind that doesn't give answers, only questions that linger after the words fade. Maybe the people who treat their birthday like a normal day are not cold or detached or joyless. Maybe they are simply people who learned that expecting too much can break a heart quietly. Maybe they are people who carry their own history, like a fragile thing. People who learn to celebrate others but never themselves. People who learn that attention comes with risks. People who learn that love can be conditional. People who learn that silence hurts less than unmet hopes. Maybe the truth is not that they don't care about their birthday. Maybe the truth is that they have never known what it feels like for the day to truly belong to them. And perhaps the saddest part is this. Some of them stopped celebrating their birthday long before they even reached adulthood. Somewhere along the way, they became caretakers of everyone but themselves. Somewhere along the way, they learned to dim their own light so others wouldn't be blinded by it. Somewhere along the way, they decided, consciously or not, that their existence was something to tolerate, not cherish. So when the calendar marks their birth, the world does not shift for them. The day does not swell with meaning. They simply move through the hours quietly, gently, invisibly, as though celebrating themselves would be a disruption, as though being born was not an event worth remembering. And maybe the point is not to force them to celebrate, not to pressure them into joy, not to insist they care when they have reasons not to. Maybe the point is simply to understand them, to see them, to recognize the quiet, unspoken story wrapped around their indifference. To acknowledge that behind every "it's just a normal day" is a human being who once learned to shrink themselves because the world did not expand for them when it mattered. And maybe, one day, gently, without expectation, without pressure, they might learn to celebrate themselves in small ways. A cup of their favorite drink, a walk in a place that feels safe, a moment of gratitude for surviving another year. A whisper to themselves, "I'm still here." And that means something. But until then, perhaps the softest truth is this. Some people do not celebrate their birthday because no one ever taught them how. And the world is quieter for it, but not better. Because somewhere, beneath the ordinary rhythms of a normal day, a heart still waits, shyly, silently, to be seen. Even if it never says so, even if it never asks, even if it pretends not to care. The hidden psychology is not about birthdays at all. It is about worth, about longing, about wounds carried quietly, about the complicated tenderness of being human. And like all tender things, it whispers more than it speaks. It whispers, "I wish someone knew. I wish someone noticed. I wish someone celebrated me. I wish I felt worthy of being celebrated." And then it quiets again. Just like a birthday treated as a normal day, soft, unassuming, and full of feelings no one sees. A whisper instead of a candle flame. A pause instead of a party. A life quietly asking for something it has never been taught to receive. And maybe that whisper, more than anything else, is the part worth listening to.